Welcome to the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. We're going to explore ways to sharpen our diagnostic skills, find learning resources, and hear from experts in the automotive field. Hello and welcome, automotive world. This is the Automotive Diagnostic Podcast. My name is Sean Tipping. I'll be your host today. Today on the show, I have a guest joining me, Kris Lewis. Kris Lewis is the Director of Training with Automotive Training Group, or ATG, and Kris is an absolute wealth of knowledge in the automotive industry. He's been in the industry for 47 years between being a technician and training. It's an impressive stat no matter which way you look at it. 47 years of doing any career is incredibly impressive, but today, he's going to share with us a little bit about himself, but also what ATG as a training company has to offer the automotive industry and technicians. He's going to talk about the classes, the instructors, the training manuals, and just share some really useful automotive information for everybody. So a really good interview. I'm excited to get going, so let's jump right in. Well, welcome, Kris. How's it going today?
Pretty good, Sean. Nice to be here. I'm looking forward to this. Try to help out you and your listeners, try to understand what our industry's got, and hopefully we'll understand what you help do to help our industry. Get the future for the techs, make them happier. How's that sound?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, the goal here, the podcast as a whole is just to try to get out information to people that are, hungry to learn and better themselves. And, I always felt that way when I was in the industry as a tech, is like, where can I go to get, more information and resources and stuff. So, I don't know. I just felt inclined to do my best to provide that for the industry.
One word you said is hungry. You got to stay hungry with the technology changes we are coming out, and what's under the hood of cars we haven't even dealt with yet, what the future holds. Things that we might have learned 15, 20 years ago might not play into effect in today's cars, the thought process or the diagnostic procedure.
Yeah, you gotta evolve with the changing vehicles and the technology that's going into everything today.
But it is a lot of fun. I mean, I still get chills when I teach classes, when I can say, guys, we can make it this simple. We using an ideology or using a diagnostic discipline. And it is very rewarding when you got a car that maybe, especially when they came from other shops or a dealership that couldn't be figured out, and you diagnose it and you get it right the first time. To me, that's why I'm a mechanic.
That's a heck of a feeling when you're that guy that it's been to 3-4 other shops and you end up figuring it out, and maybe it's simple for you, or maybe it's not, but just that feeling of nailing it and just getting through that problem. That's what kept me coming back as a tech every day. Is that maybe I'll get that one that I can solve.
And sometimes even the fact of just doing simple maintenance on a car, knowing that the car is safer for the family to drive. Whether it be kids in it or grandparents or something to that effect. Hey, when that car leaves my bay, it's safe. I'm not doing it for the money, but even though money is nice, I'm doing it because I like helping people. And a lot of mechanics, I'm sure you would agree to this. We were born with this skill. You got that talent to work with your hands, and you don't want to sit behind a desk.
Yeah, there's a lot of careers where you may be helping someone in some way, but maybe you don't directly see it every day. But this is a field where, I mean, you see it immediately, the people and the families that you're keeping them going, keeping them on the road. And like you said, safe, but just there's a lot of satisfaction in that. And your friends and family too, if you're willing, not everybody is, and that's fine. But, if I can help out my neighbors and stuff, that's
sure.
Why not?
Sure. I just had a recent one where my neighbor came over and I said, he's got multiple cars. I said, where's your little pickup truck? And he said, well, it's at the mechanic. I said, it's been a while. He says, what's the problem? And he goes, well, every once in a while I want to hit the brake pedal it's hard as a rock. I said, how often? He goes, I don't know, could be once a week, could be once a day. And the mechanic thinks it's a bad ABS control module. And I started thinking, I said, no, that doesn't sound like an ABS control module. I said, ask the technician to pull the ABS fuse and see if it happens. Sure enough, it still happens. It was nothing more than a brake booster. But this guy was going to go for, I think it was $600 for the ABS control module, plus programming.
Yeah.
And I never touched the car, but it just made me feel good that I saved this older gentleman quite a bit of money, because he would have put an ABS control module in it and it would have still happened. And then he still would have had to put a booster in it.
Yep.
It's things like that I like telling those stories. Not that I helped him, it's just that the mechanic can help. You know,
Right.
the caring. Try to help people out. And as you said, the car comes in, ain't running right, and you can see the difference right away, or the smile on the customer's face. You know, yeah, it's a great feeling. I will tell you this, that as a trainer, watching the expressions of my students is the reward. When they tell me they came to a class 2 weeks ago, a year ago, and they used some diagnostic discipline we taught them, and it fixed them cars, or you get an email, hey, you taught a class last night, and I actually used it today and fixed 2 cars.
Nice.
You know, that's just, you know, because you probably, most mechanics know that when they get into the industry, they struggle.
It's a very tough industry to be a beginner in.
And then all of a sudden we could find ways to make it easy for everybody involved. To me, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've only been teaching for about 3 years, but now that some of my students are out in the field for a couple of years, I keep in contact with a few of them, and yeah, it is really cool to hear some of the things that they're learning and able to do. Very, very rewarding. But speaking of you being a trainer, would you just take a moment to just let everybody listening know about yourself? You know, how long you've been in the field and maybe what got you into training?
You have enough time?
Let's go for it. There's no rules in podcasting.
Just completing my 47th year in the automotive industry.
Wow.
It pretty much is. I mean, I think I had 1 year where I was working part-time as a mechanic, and part-time I had another job, because I didn't want to make a decision to be a mechanic the rest of my life. I never did anything else. My first job was doing body work and mechanical work in the shop, and I was 16 years old. So it's pretty much in my blood, and I've enjoyed it. But of the 47 years in this business, 37 of those years, I was a mechanic in the bay. And that's extremely important to me. And as I talk to my other trainers in ATG, I push, never remember those days, you know, when you just couldn't afford to buy the latest and greatest equipment. Remember what it's like to be 18, 19, 20 years old. And I use that because throughout my career, I can remember days where I'd have a problem car, and I would call the local guy down the road, a friend of mine, and say, hey, Teddy, and he'd talk to me with the problem. And then I noticed as time went on, I was doing my own reading. You know, we barely had the internet back in those days. He'd start calling me. So one day I just said, you know what? I said, how about you guys bring you guys after work, come over to the shop, I'll buy the pizza and soda, we'll hang out, and let me show you this equipment that I bought and some of these tricks and some of these things that I made. Basic wiring, basic sensor things. And that's how it started. I enjoyed it. And then I had gotten a job, and the Snap-on tool rep saw me talking to a younger tech. And he looked at me and goes, you're going to make a good trainer someday. And helping out other shops, doing things on my own, going to their shops after work. If they got a new piece of equipment that I was comfortable with, I would tell the salesman, hey, if you sell this to somebody local, I'll go hang out one night after work and help them out with it. And I got the name around. OTC, Scantool, Genesis, they had hired me to do some after-sales support. In other words, you buy a tool, you got a problem, we send a trainer out, or you buy the big major package. That started more part-time. And then I started a training company of my own here in New Jersey. Just local stuff, you know, maybe 10, 15 guys in the local firehouse, 20, I mean, maybe, I don't know, 2-hour classes, nothing great. But one thing that I think the biggest thing that I did that made my career was you hear these national training events, whether it be Industry Week in Vegas, SEMA Apex, or Vision is one of the larger training events in Kansas City.
Sure.
You got Super Saturday in Pennsylvania. You got the big event in. I would go to these events, and I wouldn't go because I wanted to learn how to fix cars. I wanted to learn the industry because all I knew was what the shop I worked in Bergen County, New Jersey. I wanted to learn the whole industry, my curiosity. And I got to meet a lot of people, and a lot of people got to meet me. And I saw the amount of effort and desire I had. And then, well, I met a company called ATG. It turns out I had known them under a previous owner, previous name. And they said, "You want to try doing a little training for us?" That was almost 10 years ago.
Okay.
And then about 5 years after that, they said, "Would you like to become director of training?" And I said, "Great. What's that mean?" I didn't know. I didn't know.
Sounds important.
Yeah. And now I couldn't be happier. I get to travel. Well, I've traveled. I think I've done 37 states I've taught in. I've taught in every lower province of Canada multiple times. I've been to Japan.
Wow.
ATG has taught in Brazil. I think it was the America Samoa. We're all over the place. We've taught in all 50 states. Like I said, multi internationals we call it. And I just fell in love with it. I'm getting knowledge. Tim Flannery, he does product development. He writes all our training manuals. We'll talk about that later. I read them word for word and kick myself for not knowing this stuff years ago. And I try to put things in a layman's terms. And as we just said before, the best thrill is just watching the faces on people. And they're like, "Wait a minute." They'll say to you something like, "Wait a minute, Kris, you're telling me I could diagnose that with like 95% accuracy in 5 minutes?" Yeah, why? I just had one last week. It took me 3 days. That excitement. Sometimes I say it's like I'm the father and I'm talking to my children, giving them advice about life.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time reading. I probably spend every bit of 8 days a week talking about something, whether it be neighbors, friends, other trainers. My trainers and I were all on the phone all the time. Just talking to you, learning different things about the industry. I was on the road teaching this week in Chicago, but we did webinars, so I couldn't watch the webinar. And I called my trainers up. I said, "How'd it go?" "Oh, it was great. I said, "No. How can I make it 1% better?"
Okay.
So we just talk, just get some ideas, and we're talking about the ideologies and ways to present things. And I just love it. I just love it. Luckily, I'm good at it. I think I am because I still got a job.
Well, yeah, I mean, 47 years, that's got to say something for sure.
Yeah, well, so back to how I became a trainer and about me. It's I worked in a body shop as a mechanic. So I was getting a lot of cars where you're not going to get a wiring diagram. This is before computers. So the manuals weren't printed. You might have been at the dealership, but not in the aftermarket. Scan tools were just like, just coming out. I'm like, all right, great. I bought a scan tool. What do I do with it? There was no internet, so there was no such thing as online training. E-books were never heard of. So you kind of forced. And the one thing I always remember, late 80s Fords, there was no such thing as data stream.
Right.
It was flash. You had codes with the sweep of a meter or something. So I said, if I'm going to fix these cars and I'm going to stay in this industry, I've got to learn it. I didn't blame anybody else later in my career. I just took responsibility. I'm going to do whatever it takes, whether I'm an intelligent person and I can read it once and get it, or do I have to read the book 3 times and get it? It doesn't matter. Some subjects I get, some I read the books 3 times. Or, so it was the desire. And you said the word before, hungry, that I just was always curious on how things worked. And, one saying, I got quite a few different sayings throughout the years. The mechanic has this job. Here's the keys. You got an hour to diagnose it. Correct? It's pretty much the industry standard. So now someone's telling me I got to diagnose it and how much time I'm going to take. All right. I better do a little more studying tonight at home.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I go out to these trade shows and national events to get I didn't realize I was getting my name and face around, but I'd be asking those kind of questions. Why is your tool better than his tool? Just curiosity. And like I said, I think most mechanics have it in their blood. I really do. But it's been a good ride, and I'm getting up there in age, and people are saying, when are you going to retire? Never. I don't work for a living. I'm having fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, if anybody can say that, they're just doing what they love every day and getting paid for it. That's the dream, right?
For example, when I'm not working on classes or working on automotive, I'm working on my boat.
Okay.
I got twin 454 engines. So guess what? I just love tinkering. I love figuring things out. I love creating things.
Yeah, and that is such a key, personality trait of most people that get into this business is obviously they like working on stuff, they like working with their hands, but going back to something that you mentioned, just recognizing in yourself that I do need to improve myself. I need to go learn. I need to seek something out. That is a whole nother thing that unfortunately not everybody has, or they don't have it right away. It's maybe an ego thing where I can just show up and I'm going to do my thing and I don't need to put in, any extra effort. I don't need to seek anything out. But once you get past that and you realize, okay, I need to learn, I need to go absorb it from somewhere. It sends your skill set through the roof once you're actually able to observe that and go out and find some training or education somewhere.
Well, another motivator for me back when I was younger was financial. I'm seeing people in other industries with newer cars, or even some other mechanics with newer cars or bigger toolboxes. And I'm like, well, why are they getting paid more than me? Why do they have more money than me? And then I realized, I got to look and blame the guy in the mirror. Was I putting in the time? I mean, we chose to be mechanics, but when you make that decision, no one's going to tell you that in 15, 20, 30 years, you're going to have millions and millions of lines of software coding, anywhere from 50 to 75 modules, electric vehicles. That's not what I signed up for. I signed up for keep buying bigger hammers.
Yeah.
If you couldn't fix it, you need a bigger hammer. Bigger toolbox and bigger hammers. We didn't know, so we go with the changes in the industry. But that's one thing I love. You'll never be bored.
No.
I guarantee it. You'll never be bored. You can read everything you need to know today. Get up tomorrow morning, and some of it may change. I love it. I don't ever want to retire. I joke around. If I hit the lottery, the only difference is I'd fly first class and stay in suites. That's just about it.
That's great. I love it.
It's cool stuff. Yeah.
I worked with a guy at Firestone for a number of years, and I think he retired at 40. But it really was, it was a treat to get to work with him, and just see the perspective of everything he'd seen over his years in the industry. Cause 47 years, 40 years, that's a long time in one industry, and just the wealth of knowledge and experience that you get from that. Yeah, I got big respect for anybody that can stick with anything for that long. So that's really cool.
You gotta look at the other side of it. Maybe I'm just not good enough to do anything else.
Well,
it can go either way. No, I love what I do, and working with ATG has been a godsend to me. It really is, and it's just downright fun.
Well, yeah, tell us about ATG, Automotive Training Group, what they're all about. I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but I've never really gone in depth as far as what the company's all about.
Well, they're out of San Diego, California. That's where the main office is. But basically, what the company is we write our own training manuals. The average class that you'll go to, they're all instructor-led. You go to the facility all over the country, as I said before. The annual manual is 350 to 400 pages. Once in a while, you'll get a manual at 200, like a Cummins specific or a hands-on lab scope, which is specifically designed for that demo board we're using. But the books are not, excuse me, not as much about the other type of manuals that you read. They're about an ideology. They're about how to diagnose. We could probably spend all night talking about theory of how things work. And a lot of that stuff's cool to know. But we only have that diagnostic hour. We have to know how to diagnose it. So our ideology is the terminology I'll break up a little bit deeper later. It's called high-level indicators. So we write our own books. Pretty much Tim Flannery does all the 80% of the research, does all the writing. And then we have an office in San Diego, like I said, with our administrative and sales team, and they put together classes all over this country. At any given time, we could have anywhere from 8 to 10 classes going on a given day throughout the country. It's an instructor-led. We still are firm believers of being live in a classroom. We know with the COVID, it's been a little bit tough for the last few months. A lot of people doing webinars, as we are too. But most of our students like the hands-on, the face-to-face. I'm sure you do the same with your students.
Yeah.
Nothing to do it and talk to them, nothing to show them. Most of our classes are all classroom oriented. We don't do that much hands-on because we're using hotels, conference rooms. The class is 6:30 to 10 at night. We probably have, in the last 10 years, about 30 different subjects. We teach anywhere from any of the main diesel manufacturers to electrical, wiring diagram, GM, Ford, Chrysler specific. When it comes to the imports, what we did that seems to work great is we'll do like EVAP import. So we'll teach you EVAP on all the imports. GDI, VVT are the same thing. And we stress heavily this is how it works. We have a little bit of theory, how the component works. Then we'll explain maybe some of the problems, which like in EVAP on Toyota is the terminology that gets everybody in trouble. It's still the same thing on other cars with a different name, different location. Then we're going to show you our way to diagnose it, okay? Some of the stuff you read in normal Mitchell, all that, or whatever you're using, shop information. But some of it is ours. Ideas we came out with. Then you might have a chart in your book and say, do this test. And then with that test, that'll guide you towards the next test. Instead of following a flow chart that says you go this way, you need a little mindset to it. And then we have case studies, normally multiple, to show you how our way is a lot faster. I'll give you just a quick example. A network CAN bus, network communication, control area network on a car. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people out there that fix them and diagnose them fairly simple with out of lab scope. Now this is not an ATG thing. It's just that they can diagnose it with a multimeter. Well, what if you can do it with a different tool, and we'll teach you how to do it. We'll teach you how to set up the tool and show you how to do it in half the time. Okay. So no, it's we've been around. I think they've been in business now for 17 years. Yeah, 17 years they've been in business now.
Okay.
The administrative Tim is the president, Heather's the vice president. I think they both have 30-something years each. They worked for Gendam Books, Mitchell Books back in the day. So this is also in their blood. And as I said, we don't teach you this is how an ignition coil works. This is how a spark plug works. We don't teach, we may give you a 5-minute description of how a turbo works, but I don't tell you what the torque or the bearing size is or what the torque is. We don't really discuss repair. What we discuss is diagnose. So when you do the repair, it's a one-time repair. So I'll give you one more. You have a car in your bay and it's got a misfire and a P0201 code for injector number 1 circuit fault. Okay, and the flow charts, which were all taught many, many years ago, that was the only way we knew, is going to tell you to go to the injector and check for 12 volts. And they're going to tell you to ohm the injector.
Sure.
So can you imagine if you went to that injector, and how long does it take to get to the injector though?
Yeah, it depends.
Excuse me, this car is out there, you could be into it a half hour, 45 minutes to get to it. You check the injector, and you got your 12 volts, you got good ground, and it ohms out in spec. Now what?
Yeah.
You got to put it all back together, huh?
Right.
What if we can learn other ways of doing it, whether it be with a lab scope or something as simple as fuel trim. If your fuel trim is extremely high, you've got a fuel-related problem. If it stays high on all driven conditions, it's going to be an injector or fuel pressure at that injector. If it's only high fuel trim at idle, it's going to be a vacuum leak, like an intake manifold runner on that gasket or an injector O-ring. So that's the way we break everything down. Try to make it simple, and we use the terminology high-level indicators, and I convert that to my language. Any test you can perform in 5 minutes or less,
Okay.
just do it. I'm sure you work on cars yourself, and you've had the conversation. You know what? This car's got this bad hesitation, and I'm really, really wondering if I've got a problem with the crank sensor. Start it out, or the mass airflow, or fuel pressure. Every mechanic is only going to make a decision, and they've got no codes, is going to make a decision based upon their personal experience. If you personally got a lot of mass airflows causing that symptom, you're going to have to have mass airflow. If I've got a lot of crank sensors in my history causing this kind of symptom, I'm going to do crank. And I said, hey, Sean, I got this car. What's your opinion? We're going to talk for 10 minutes about it, correct?
Mm.
In 10 minutes, I got to test both of them. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you might as well just run through it and see what you got.
So we have our specific high-level indicators. Things are the ones that I use the most. Idle quality. That's if I got a misfire code, it's going to tell me if it's intermittent or not. I don't want to be looking for a misfire that's not misfiring because they got a code for the misfire. If it's idle and gray, your timing chain didn't jump a tooth. Right? A little simple, even though you got a cam crank correlation code. Okay. Fuel trim is going to tell me if it's fuel related.
Mm-hmm.
Throttle angle also tells me a lot. If the throttle blade was completely closed and the engine's running, you got a vacuum.
Sure.
Right. I use a vacuum gauge.
Yeah, that's such a huge, I think it's a underused test nowadays. It's just popping a gauge on there and see what you got.
And then the last test is volumetric efficiency.
Okay.
You take on a road test and see if it's breathing as designed, 100% designed. But
you guys have a calculator for that, right?
If we do on our website, yes, we do. It's a free download, or you can do it interactively on the website. But here's the thing. It's not about trying to figure out what's wrong with the car. Because if that's the truth, and that's what you want to do, you are going to be fighting the software. Because we don't know what the software is going to do in every single year make a model car when it sees that little glitch in the mass airflow, or if it sees a vacuum leak, or it's there is a vacuum leak. That's computer strategy. That's what sets codes. That puts in default values, backup strategies, and nobody, and I mean nobody, is going to know every single year make a model car, because as soon as you mass, what kind of car do you drive, Sean?
I got a 03 Buick Park Avenue.
Okay. So let's say I would dare to say you know that car pretty well.
I'd say so, yeah. Okay.
And you understand the strategies of that. And then all of a sudden you got a little problem, you got to check engine light, you find there's a software update. You update the computer, what happened to your strategies?
I don't know.
Thank you. So think of this. Why don't we learn to do simple, easy tests that take 5 minutes or less to prove what it's not?
Yeah. One of the big ones for me that I added in the last few years, like into almost every drivability complaint, is a relative compression test. I didn't use it in the past, and I now that I do, if I have a misfire, that's going to be one of my first tests. It's just to throw that on there and see what's going on. And again, maybe you don't find anything, but how long did it take you to do it? It's a very short process and gives you so much information. I
make a note of that because it's got to be a scope user, but now we got scan tools out there that are doing it right through the OBD2 connector using voltage drop.
Yeah.
Ford's been doing it for quite some time. I know GM is now doing it, and that's on the factory side. I know Ford, I've seen them in aftermarket scan tools. eScan has it built into there. It's never go to scan through PC base that has it. Someone told me the new Autel. They were going to show it to me in class. I didn't get a chance to see it. And I even joked around in the class this past week. The car came in with a trans shift issue, and you pull the dipstick out if it had one, and the fluid was the worst you've ever. You pretty much know you're going to be doing a trans on this car. Would you do relative compression?
Well, if I'm going to sell them a transmission, yeah, it's a good idea to make sure their engine's in good shape.
Right. So that's the things that we say. Number one, we all need to practice. If you don't do it for 6 months, you're going to forget how to do things. Get into this routine of how to diagnose with an ideology of, the one I use the most is, prove to me what it cannot be. Just prove it it's not. Hey, I don't know why this car is misfiring, but I know for a fact, relative compression, I don't have a hard, rock solid mechanical fault. But on the other hand, as I say, most guys with misfires, and I'm not picking on anybody because it's the way we were all taught, when you get a misfire, we start with a tune-up. Because we've been doing that since the cars were, back about in the 60s. So now the car gets a coil and the boot, right, and the plug, and it doesn't fix it. Now what? Well, if I've got good auto quality and my misfire is intermittent, I'm going to do relative compression, look at a vacuum gauge, and look at my fuel trim, and then I'm going to do VE. If you've got high fuel trim numbers, no spark plug is going to fix that car.
Right.
So diagnose it, then you sell the spark plugs if the customer is maintenance. So it's trying to get mechanics to stop. Well, why is this car setting a reoccurring 420 code? That was last week's phone call. The guy's third converter in 2 months. You think it's not the converter? And I said, well, what did you check? He goes, well, I think my tech put the temperature gun on it, which is the old school way of testing things. Not the car manufacturer doesn't test that way. It's using Did you check the O2s? You check relative compression? You check mode 6 for misfires? Did you check what's the auto quality? Well, it runs a little rough. So that's where we get into the trap. And another one of my sayings: you live by the code, you die by the code. Because the only thing in your mind is the converter. Sorry, the converter is not going to be able to handle that amount of hydrocarbons.
Right.
Well,
that's a lot of what diagnosing really is we've got all these tests that we perform, and we expect a certain result if everything's good. And I guess that goes into really making a good test, is you should expect something. And like you said, we're just trying to prove everything out. Okay. If I do this test, I get a good result. It's not that. I'm going to move on closer to
right.
To what it
go
is.
To that injector, as I mentioned before, you're expecting to see a problem, right? Because the code says you got a problem there. The flow chart's sending you there. You're going to go to that injector. You're going to check that injector, and you're hoping to find the first test you perform to find the broken part, whether it's a bad connection or bad injector. And it doesn't. Now you feel a little defeated. Now you don't really have a plan of attack. Well, what if we use a different ideology and say, well, before you check that injector, run through the things we just discussed. If you've got a scope, let's do relative compression. If you've got one of the scan tools, run relative compression. Put a vacuum gauge on the thing. If you got a vacuum gauge that's bouncing like a kid on Christmas morning, you may have a bad injector, but the car ain't going to run much better.
Right.
And I'm sure you've seen it in your career, how many times the code doesn't match the part that I replaced.
Funny enough, I just had an episode about that exact thing, where the code description, just the name of the code and the scan tool can be very misleading at times. Not always, but sometimes. If you just read the description, it is not even close to what you actually need to go after.
Well, what I ask my students is, how often have you guys change a mass airflow for a drivability issue? And everybody raises their hand because it's a common thing to go bad. Then I ask, how many times you changed the mass airflow? Did it have a mass airflow sensor code? That's not a common code, but it's a common fix. You'll get fuel trim issues. You get fuel trim codes with bad mass airflows. You might get stalling issues, hesitation issues, lack of power issues. 420 codes, converter codes are not uncommon. We did have one where the crank sensor was given out, the mass airflow was given out causing a stall, and the computer was sensing a change in the crank signal, and it said a crank sensor code.
Okay.
And that's where you try to fight the engineers, and we learned you just can't. It's just not worth the time and effort. Now, the engineers, they designed it, and they will also write the flow charts.
Yeah.
There's nothing greater to a mechanic. You're doing a flow chart, you're going, everything's going great, nice day, nice weather, and you get to the bottom line, it says replace with known good PCM.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Well, and sometimes it's not even that long of a list. There's 3-4 steps and then replace module.
Yeah, I think someone said it was a Chrysler product that step one was replace module. So number one, if I had a known good, and what kind of a day you're going to have if you put a module in this thing, and some of these modules are $1,000 and it doesn't fix the car.
Yeah. If you work on GMs, there's none of that. It's brand new. You can't swap in a used one or anything like that.
Yep. So, and all I ask when students call me, got in class, or they call me on the phone, text me, email me, I want to know what test you performed. Did you happen to do a voltage drop test on the injector? Well, no. Why not? Because it's not in the service manual for the flow chart, right? Loading a circuit. Have you ever seen that in the flow chart?
I can't say that I have.
Right. And those are the things that I've been doing it long enough, and I remember every car that kicked my butt and what mistakes I made. So going back to it, that's the whole ideology of ATG. And we're not going to sit here and tell you exactly that if the turbine is spinning that 18,000 RPM, you're going to get 2.3 PSI boost, and the map sensor is going to read 1.68 volts. We don't go that deep. We used to years ago. I could tell you, we would teach a class, and I would tell you every single voltage for every single sensor on the car. Then we realized, number one, you're not going to remember it. Number two, it had no value, because we have now learned that a lot of your code setting criteria is learned values over time to compensate for wear and tear.
Okay.
Plus, they update a part, they change the voltage by, 40 millivolts. Okay, who looks like the fool? Me, for teaching it that way.
Yeah.
So how about we break it down? And the manuals are written in such a way, they're actually written like you and I talking. They're not written in that kind of a heavy structure.
I did want to bring that up. It's not like a real technical read when you read through these. It's like you were having a discussion with another tech. I mean, really do enjoy that.
You're reading the book and he's cracking a joke. I didn't say it was a good joke, but then again, if Tim hears this and I want to raise, it was a great joke, Tim. So you could take it to your book, and we have these things, we call them tables. They're like square boxes, and you check your VE, you check your fuel trim. These are the driving conditions. The fuel trim went out at load or idle versus your rough idle, and we'll steer you on the next test. Go check your fuel pressure. Go check your cam crank correlation, and then you'll switch to that. I'll say the GM class. Then you'll switch to the mechanical section where we go through cam crank sync. If your fuel trims were way out, we might steer you over to the GDI section where we talk about GDI. So we're not focusing on the year, make, and model of everything. What we're focusing on is the system. And if I've got a vehicle that, no matter how I drive this car, from warm up to idle to light load, medium load to crazy mode, and my fuel trims are good under all driving conditions, your GDI system is good. Your problem may be the code sets. It could be intermittent. There is one code that can be set when that's when the cam follower wears out on a high pressure pump. But that fast, I can rule out that I either have a fuel related problem or not. I also can tell you that if I've got a misfire and my fuel trims are out, I'm going to look for a fuel issue, not an ignition issue.
Sure.
Okay. If I do have a GDI code and that fuel trims are good, my problem is intermittent in nature. And you and I had talked earlier about little tricks, keeping things simple. How about freeze frame data? Okay. What would you think could be wrong with a car? Say you got a misfire code, or you got a GDI or fuel system, fuel injector code, or whatever code you want it to be, and your freeze frame data says 304 RPM, and the coolant and the intake were the same temperature.
We're looking at the head gasket leak.
Well, isn't that a startup condition?
At 300, yeah.
Yeah, that's cranking mode, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, if you didn't read freeze frame, you'd have that thing in your bay. You'd be driving up down the highway trying to duplicate the fault. So freeze frame, we call it one of our high level indicators. If it's 0 RPM, it happened key on, which is an electrical circuit fault, not a performance issue. And we cover those things through our tables and through all our manuals. Stay on this discipline of just do the easy stuff. I'm a huge fan of generic OBD2. I would have to say 80% of the cars that I could fix with a generic OBD2 scan tool.
Well, it's nice because you know everything you're going to see in there. You know what you can find there. You know, there's always going to be fuel trims. You're always going to see, mass airflow rate if it has one. And sometimes you got to go outside of there, obviously, for stuff. But just that standardized format can be really efficient and helpful in a lot of diagnosis.
How about why can't we start with the basics? Why do we have to go right to the high-end stuff that we might not be as good with generic OBD2 or vacuum gauge or VE, fuel trim? It's the same right across all manufacturers. So if perfected on a GM, it works on a Ford. It's the same on a Toyota. Now, if I've got all that perfected, and I understand all those PIDs and how things work, then I go to my more advanced level. Unfortunately, in my career, I made the mistake to go to the advanced level right away. And I said, how often have you gotten your butt kicked on a car? And it was going to raise their hand in my class. And how many times you got your butt kicked because it was something simple? It just, yeah.
I'm raising my hand right now.
Yeah. Right? So why don't we start with the easy stuff? And in our classes, I'm talking about, but we do take it up to some type of or pretty advanced level stuff. One of our latest classes we're doing now is Ford engine performance. And some people are like, well, what's so new about Ford? Well, I have a 2019 F-150. Let me ask you, what do you think I got? Direct injection under that hood or port fuel?
I would guess direct injected. I know some of them are doing both on Toyotas and stuff.
Exactly. I've got 2 injectors per cylinder.
Yeah. I haven't diagnosed anything like that because it's all pretty new, but I can imagine that's going to be tricky down the road.
Well, do you know what's tricky about it? To get to to replace the injector is 3.5 hours.
Is that the GDI ones, or?
You got well over an hour just to get to an injector to test it.
Oh boy.
Doesn't matter. I don't have to get to the injectors to test it. If my fuel trims are good, how's my injectors?
They're working.
Right? Okay. If the fuel trims are bad and I go through all my other high level indicators, then I pretty much know I've got an injector problem. And I'm not going to go there to diagnose. I'm there to confirm my diagnosis. And while I'm there, the new injector will be sitting there. EGRs are back on my 2.7. Some older people understand EGR. Who got younger guys that never heard of that before. We've got twin turbos, and the turbos now spin twice as fast as any other turbo I've ever seen. They're 207,000 per.
Jeez.
Now that's just a spec I throw in the class because I read it someplace and it's cool. There's no diagnostic value to it. Okay, how fast it spins. You know what the value of that is? What kind of oil do I have to use in this engine?
It's gonna have to be
207,000 RPM. I can't be, So as we're talking here, so you got 2 injectors per cylinder. They are on my truck. I got 24 different fuel trim codes that can be produced. Okay, yeah. EGR is back. You've got drive-by-wire, I got a Vvt system. Now the Vvt system is something unique. On most VVTs, the intake cam only goes advanced or earlier. The exhaust cams go retarded or later. Volkswagen be the odd guy out. Through my research, I have not found any other manufacturer. My truck, in the Ford scan tool, I can command my exhaust cam in either direction.
Really?
So I know it's working because you can hear that the RPM changed drastically. But I haven't been able to find when they're using that.
Oh, okay.
And someone brought up a fact that I'm going to try to play around with this coming week is maybe in a warm-up condition or
Like
in a hard diesel condition.
Okay.
Have you ever worked on diesel? You've heard of an Egr Cooler, correct?
Yeah.
Well, Ford had leftovers because they put them on my truck. I got a little V6 with an Egr cooler. It's like, wait a minute. But think about every mechanic out there is going to work on a 150 unless you're a specialist. It's the most common vehicle on the road. So when this comes in the bay and you've got all these systems on it, direct, port, twin turbo, EGR, no more mass airflow. They went to MAP, speed density. All right. How are they going to diagnose that? Well, a little tip, come to our class. It's not going to be hard.
Yeah.
We're going to focus on the foundation, and then we're going to build our way up to advanced methods of testing this stuff and how we can figure out what's truly going on. I'm only getting 15 PSI boost. All I can tell you right now what the problem is. And I don't have to know the year, make, and model because of the way we teach it to prove what it's not.
So something you can apply across the board.
Our slogan is your return on investment starts tomorrow. Because you'll fix cars. If you don't get to fix a car quicker, and sometimes that's the shop you work in, you just don't have the right equipment or situation. But my firm belief is if you're more confident starting tomorrow morning after one of our classes, that confidence is priceless. That when I say to the boss, this needs a timing chain, this needs a mass airflow, this needs a converter, this needs a PCM, I know it.
Yeah. That's huge. Just, to be confident in your calls and your test results and knowing what you're seeing. And I remember as a tech going to training wherever it was, but I just come back and kind of feel rejuvenated. Like I'm not just in that everyday grind of doing brakes and snow tires changeovers. But of course, after I'd come back from a big training event, that's what I'd get first as a snow tire changeover at Firestone. But I still felt really good. Like, let me at that check engine light. I'm ready to go. You feel good after you, like you said, invest in yourself. You can put that money out for the training events. You got to pay for this sort of stuff, but it's going to pay you back, so much more.
I went through a phase of my career that I went for training and then I stopped going because every time I went to a training event, they were using equipment that I couldn't afford. So like they're showing me how to do the latest and greatest. Oh, that's great. I'm all excited to go back to the shop the next morning. I don't have that equipment. And I find out the price of that equipment. I said, okay, I ain't gonna buy that equipment. So that's why I love creating different ways to do things. If I can teach you how to diagnose a timing chain that jumped the belt, jumped the tooth, on a car that takes 4 hours to get to the cover to remove it, or you can get to the cover, there's no more timing marks. If I can teach you how to do that with 80% confidence in about 5 minutes worth of work.
That's worth the class right there.
Exactly. I'm not ordering the timing chain yet, but I got 80%, 90% confident that that's a chain problem. And now I'm going to speak to my supervisor, my boss, or the customer that I'm going to need X amount of time to verify whether you do in-cylinder pressure transducer, manual compression test, pull the front cover, instead of digging and hoping we find, because we proved what it wasn't. So back to the manuals. Yeah, they're designed for you to take back to your shop and use in the bay. It's an actual tool that you got the car with this problem. You're going to go, we'll guide you through your test. We'll do some basic stuff. And then we'll send you to what chapter you need to be focusing on. your fuel chapter, your ignition chapter, your mechanical chapter, or air chapter. Air would be air induction systems.
So you get these manuals when you attend a class, obviously, but is there a way if a technician just wanted to purchase the manual, are they available for purchase?
ATGtraining.com.
Okay.
Yeah, there's, I think, 30 manuals out there. Yeah, they're all out there. And all the subjects we discussed, from network communication through diesel. If there's a diesel tech that's listening and they get their hands on a 6.7 Power Stroke, you are not getting to anything. Everything is so buried. You know, the fuel systems on the common rail are a little problematic on the Power Stroke. And to get to one of the two solenoids, you want to get to own the solenoid. It's called a fuel volume regulator. You're probably looking about an hour and 45 minutes to get to it.
Jeez.
What if you can learn how to test that without ever popping a hood?
You have to. You got to figure that out.
Right. And then, so that's where we come up with our little tricks or ideas on how can we do this without being so intrusive. If you're going to go and do a intrusive test, hoping the first test is your last test because it's the only test you'll need. And you want to verify your diagnosis, not figure out your diagnosis. You know.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. You get a little. Let's go. Give me a car to fix. Right. This would be a fuel right now.
Yeah.
So our classes, they're normally 6:30 to 10 o'clock at night. So it'll be Monday and Tuesday. So it's 7 hours total. You get the manual with the class. I got some students that buy two manuals. They want one manual for the shop and one manual at home to read.
Okay.
And, you know, normally, like, I just spent a week in Chicago, so I was in the southwest part of, I guess, 10 miles, 15 miles southwest of Chicago, and for Monday, Tuesday, and then I go to the northern part of the state of Illinois and teach 2 more nights. Like I said before, we're all over this country. When you go to our website, you can sign up to our website and get notified if we teach in your area. You know, you put your address in, what state you're from, and we come in and we contact you. There's not a lot of pressure. But I have never met anybody who has ever said they've gone to an ATG class and never learned anything.
They're great classes. I can personally attest to the ones I've been to. I really enjoyed them. You said is ATG still doing online?
We are still doing webinars. With the COVID stuff. Besides the fact that our trainers would have gone insane, nothing to do.
Yeah.
So we're currently doing webinars. I mean, how long this is going to last once COVID is behind us, if ever, no one knows.
Right.
People say, "Oh, what are you doing tomorrow?" I said, "Well, first I'll wake up, watch the news for 5 minutes, stick my head out the door, and then figure out what I'm going to do."
Well, yeah, you're not kidding.
We're doing webinars. We were doing them every single week. Now, as the trainers are going back on the road, we had to scale back a little bit because we've learned it's impossible to do a webinar while you're teaching a class.
Yeah.
I think we just did GM Wednesday, Thursday nights. This next week we're off. Next month, the only one I know of, I'm teaching a wiring diagram class, and it's not as much about how to read a wiring diagram, which is the basics. We cover it briefly, but how to use that to diagnose a vehicle. When you got an electrical problem, you don't want to be ripping stuff apart. You get an older car, how many connectors can I take apart without them just falling apart on me? So studying the diagram, and we use the old same theory, prove what it's not. In the class that I teach, I did a webinar about 3 weeks ago. I'm teaching again, I think in December. I use a whiteout pen and say, well, these 3 things are on the same circuit. And I give you an example. I'll go, if you want, we have time later, go a little deeper into a case study where if voltage is high, I expect the 5-volt sensor to give me about 1 volt, and the voltage is repeating 4.5. Well, since the fact that the sensor and the scan tool are both reporting 4.5, we know that it's not a 5-volt feed. Because if I had a 5-volt feed that was broken, I'd have 0 volts.
Mm-hmm.
So I can pretty much cross off 5 volt feed to that sensor, and every other sensor on the car is getting 5 volts off that leg.
Sure.
Right? So again, we prove what it's not through thought process, a little bit of basic electrical, saying perfect the basics. That's the terminology I'll never forget. Never stop saying to even younger guys. Younger guys want to know what I recommend. Perfect the basics. You don't have to have the latest and greatest equipment, being the best tech out there, but whatever skill level you've got, perfect it before you move on. You got to have a good, solid foundation. If you're into electricity, pretty much everything is electrical driven. So with the wiring diagram class, we go through, well, I do it with PowerPoint. We just get rid of it. And we had a Monte Carlo as an example. Headlights don't work. High beam indicator does. It's already had new bulbs. Okay, we go back to, let's say, my era. I'm going to go up to the front headlights, the high beams with my test light, correct? Well, that's great. But then you get that car with the same exact problem. And to get to the back of the high beam, you got to pull the battery out.
Yeah.
Okay, no. Then they get to another car with the same problem. And to get to the headlight, I got to drop the bumper.
Yeah.
Then you get the same problem on the same type, a different type of car, the same symptom. And you got to drop the bumper, and you got ADAS cameras in there. That's not a smart way to test.
No.
Right? So by testing and looking at wiring diagrams, and knowing that the low beams work, we crossed off anything to do with the low beams. So the wiring diagram just got cut in half. We know the high beams work, so guess what? Anything before the high beams has to work. We can't have two bad bulbs. You can't have like the power feed to the left bulb affecting the right bulb as an open circuit. It couldn't be a ground on the left, so it can't be one of the powers or the grounds from the splices. So cross that off. The only left on the page is a wire, well, in the diagram, it's only about 1 inch long going to the bulkhead connector. And you didn't have to pop the hood. You didn't have to see. It's that type of way to go about it. That mentality that, me personally, I'm trying to push big time. Because when I teach that class live, and I did about a week and a half ago, the expressions on their faces, I give them some pretty complicated cars. And I go around a room, this is exactly what we started talking about earlier. I go around a room, guys, so I give them the year, make, and model. The story's been to multiple shops. It's got all shiny new parts on it already. Hopefully, maybe some used parts. Honestly, what do you think would be fair for you to diagnose this in time? And you go around a room, and when you got something that's been to 3 shops, multiple new parts, like I said, too many hands in the soup, you're not going to try to get an hour. Let's be honest and say you probably look at about a 2-hour diagnosis, maybe 2.5. So I said, okay, and I agreed, and we write it down, and then I give them the wiring diagram. I actually hand it to them with a bunch of highlighters, and I guide them, and they diagnose it in 20 minutes.
On paper.
Yeah. And then I asked them, what color was the car? I don't know. What was the engine size? I don't know. Was the fan belt on? I don't know. And guess what? I don't know. I don't care. We diagnosed the problem. And we did this on I think I do 8 examples like that.
Okay.
Using that whole theory of prove what it's not, whether it be a drivability issue, an electrical issue.
Yeah, that basic electrical, going with what you were saying, the basics, perfect that before you move on. And we really push that in our courses at the community college. We teach all areas of the car as according to what NATEF or ASE wants, but throughout the whole thing, we're pushing that basic electrical, because man, you get that basic skill down and you apply it to any circuit on any car, and your life's going to be so much easier if you take the time there. So we really work with our students, because man, it is so important.
Now, we talked before about the evolution of this industry and how things have changed, and it's not much longer before the boss is going to tell a technician, I need bring that Mustang in, and they're going to grab their phone and grab an app, and then Mustang's going to drive into the bay. Okay, it's just a matter of time before. And I say a car can fly in the bay. You can give me a hybrid vehicle. You can give me a tractor trailer. You can give me full electrics, anything you want. There's one thing I guarantee you they cannot change. And no matter what they want to do to a car, even all this automatic braking and automatic steering, there's one thing they cannot ever change on us, and that's the basic laws of electricity. And everything is based upon it. When I teach a hybrid class, I'll give you a little teaser. Hybrid is not something a lot of mechanics want to deal with, okay? Because they hear it's, high voltage. Okay, that it is. Well, let me give you a quick, very, very quick, like a 1 minute hybrid class. It's got a DC battery. Is that new to us?
Not at all.
And we call it a 12-volt battery, which technically is 6 individual cells, correct? So if you know how to check the 12-volt battery, cell by cell by cell, if it had 6 cells or 600 cells, does it matter? It's the same diagnostic approach, correct?
Just a little more addition, that's all.
Yeah, it's a little more addition, but it's band-aided to help you out. But the fact is, it's a DC battery. Don't let the number of voltage scare you unless you want to touch the wires or stick your tongue on it. And in a regular car that we work on, when that battery gets drained down, how do we recharge it? It's an alternator. An alternator is nothing more than a 3-phase motor, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is in a hybrid? It's got 2 of them bigger. They're 3-phase motors. They make AC voltage. An alternator on a car makes AC voltage to charge a DC battery. So I have this little funky thing there that converts it from AC to DC. I don't care what you want to call it, but on a hybrid, it's the same thing, whatever they want to call it. It is nothing more. I call it the marvel of simplicity. It's 3-phase motors. You still got the UVW leg. You still would ohm them out or check current or voltage drop. Okay. Whether the car's got 1 computers or 22 computers, a computer's a computer. You've got to give it power. You got to give it ground. Okay. It's still got a DC battery. Oh, it's got electric air conditioning. Okay. That's another alternator or 3-phase motor. The testing stays the same. So electric vehicles, same thing. Basic electrical is critical. Very, very critical. You don't have to go and apply like Ohm's law, Watt's law, Kirchhoff's law, that stuff, but you have to understand how to test it. And how, at least with Ohm's law, how one affects the other.
Yeah, the relationship between them. That's always been my focus. It's not so much the math and the equations. That's cool, but how one affects the other is if you can really grasp that and apply it in your testing, it's lights out. You got it.
As a trainer, and I was just talking to one of my trainers today about this. How do you make Ohm's law fun and interesting when you're teaching it?
I don't know.
Yeah, all right. So now this is this is an old guy from New Jersey here, so bear with me. I don't use EIR, or ATG uses VAR, volts, amps, resistance, right? I use volts, current resistance, because I can remember a VCR.
There you go.
Okay. Years ago, if you didn't know how to read a manual or had to do any skills, the VCR would always flash the time.
Oh, sure.
Right? So between the C and the R is a time.
There you go.
Okay. So that's an ATG quality. We spend the time to figure out how to make an advanced level interesting, not boring, simplified in layman's terms, make a boring subject. Like to me, basic electrical could be boring for a lot of people, but can you make it fun? Can you change something? Use an acronym that you make up as you're bored and driving. There's nothing better in a classroom than laughter. They're enjoying it. Matter of fact, we did a webinar and somebody wrote a comment, and I guess he didn't know my name. You know what he said? The old guy's funny. No, so and I work with my trainers as much as I can to let's run through some slides. We use something similar to Zoom, and we'll go back and forth. And you teach me that case study, and then I'll teach it back to you. We go back and forth, and just something is a different analogy, just something to make it different. Because these guys are working. They're working 8 to 5, then they got to go grab a bite to eat, meet us in class. We don't serve food in our classes. Pre-COVID, we served refreshments, soda and water and stuff. But now with COVID, without that, they're tired. You got to keep them awake, got to keep them alert, They don't
It's tough after working a full day in the shop.
They don't want to sit there and try to understand Watt's law. And it's just, well, how do I need to know it? And with the basic electrical, only because I went through it last night, most of the guys that grab their multimeter, the first thing they're going to check is voltage. Their multimeter, they check voltage, correct? That's why he's at the top half of the pie. He's the most commonly checked. The second most common thing they do is resistance, checking ohming something out.
Mm-hmm.
The least one that the people use is current or amperage. Which one of those is more conclusive in a test result?
Current most of the time, especially if it's an output or something.
Right. So you say to yourself, am I teaching you basic electrical, or am I teaching you why you want to learn it? And then you get into, well, you know, current is equal to all parts of a series circuit. That if the series circuit, I don't have to get to that injector. I can pop the fuse.
Yeah.
Right. So you put a Y factor. You try to put a little fun into it. Make creativity. We're huge at that with the trainers. And you know, coming up with our own stuff. The webinars have been interesting. It's been a whole new thing for everybody. You know.
Yeah.
To do it. But
we had to do the spring portion of our courses online, and I mean, it's tough. It just does not. It's not the same as in person. I mean, especially they're missing out on the shop time for a college course, but even just a lecture or going through something, it's just not the same on a screen. Something's missing there. So that I would encourage anybody to go to an in-person class if you're able to.
Well, you know, I can't. I like to, you know, start a class off and discuss a few subjects in a general format and just get some feedback and try to build a class. I mean, on what that level of technician is. And, you know, they're all different levels, but I can adjust and adapt. Well, in a webinar, I can't see anything. I don't see their faces. There might be some guys that want to ask questions, but they're too timid to type it in the chat room. But in the classroom, I would see that in their eyes, that they look a little confused. And then maybe I'll use a different analogy. So you can kind of build every class. We say every class is different based upon our students. You know, I don't want to be so advanced that the younger tech or less experienced tech gets lost and says that's too high end for me. And I also don't want the other end. You can't do that in a webinar. I like to walk around and talk to the guys before class, after class, during breaks. You guys ever use that kind of diagnosis? Have you seen those kind of cars? And that's how I can make the class better. You know, we always say no two classes are identical. So
yeah.
Change and adapt to the audience, you know. And I tell guys, listen, normally in this class, you know, we don't go through the intake manifold runner controls in our Ford class. We just don't have the time. Because it's 350-page manual that would take me about at least 4 nights to do. Okay. But if you got a problem in the car or really understanding intake manifold runner control, you let me know now, let me know during break, after class, before class tomorrow. I will spend the time. And in one of our classes, relative compression is coming up. I said, you know what? I'll start tomorrow half hour early. Meet me in the parking lot 6 o'clock. We'll do a couple of relative compressions. Now, I don't do that every night, but if they ask for it, why not?
Yeah.
You know, one night we were doing CAN network communication diagnosis, where I was using a breakout box and I was shorting out wires so they get to see what it looked like on the tool. So yeah, we're very creative, and I push that with my guys. Like I said, we're out of San Diego. It's I think there's, I don't know, last I heard, there was like 10 or 12 people in that office to help put this together, from the administrative to the sales team. We try to come out with a new subject 2 to 3 times a year.
Okay.
We have electronic demo boards that look like a car and all the parts on it. And it's got faults built into it. It's programmable to change faults. And then we got resistance. It's a whole bunch of stuff we can do with it. We're doing lab scope hands-on with that. We're doing Ford. Probably beginning of next year, we're going to do an advanced drivability, which is almost like we're going to start hitting our ideology really, really, really heavy. After that, we're thinking about doing the same electronics board, but go back to electrical and electrical shorts and voltage drop. Things like checking the circuit. Hey, I unplugged the injector and I got 12 volts to plug. That doesn't mean anything to me. And the analogy I bring up to everybody, I got a piece of wire. It's 1 foot long, 60 strands of high quality wire. I ohm it out. You're going to get about 0, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Cut 59 of the 60 strands. What's my reading?
The same.
Yeah. Years ago, the wire would burn up. In today's world, that PCM is going to, or whatever the module is controlling, is going to shut it down. They shut down that drive in since the voltage drop. How can you tell? Go look at your freeze frame data, 0 RPM. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And actually, I can see by the smile on your face and some of the things I say. Pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah. I got to imagine creating, working those classes together. That's got to be awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's fun. The bad news is when we get going, I'm talking 3-4 hour phone calls. We get into it, like after the kids and the wives and the dog went to bed and stuff like that. And, because we're all over the country, so you don't know what time it is for who.
Right.
What are you doing tonight? Nothing going on. No ball game on. All right, why don't we talk about DVT or GDI or turbos or something? And we just get at it and just start yapping away and throwing ideas. And most of us have 2 computers. We're Googling this while we're Googling that. And just all we want to do is make life easy for everybody. How's that sound?
That's great.
Out there. Just make it easy for them. The only guidance that's in the industry as a whole is the generalist flow charts. And I'm sure any seasoned tech will tell you they may work, but it should say right on the top of the page, if you continue to use this flow chart, you're never going to make book time.
Yeah, a little disclaimer at the top.
What was it? I think it was the 171, 174 code on a Ford product years ago. It was 22 pages.
Boy. Yeah, I think the most useful thing I get out of a flow chart, because I don't follow them step by step, but sometimes they'll give you little pieces of information so that you can help understand what the code's checking for, what systems are involved, or maybe even a value like a voltage at a certain point. Oh, okay. They didn't say that in service information, but it's in the flow chart. That's where I'll at least scan it and see what they're having me do, and then I kind of take it from there.
Like an easy one is a map sensor versus the years ago we had a vacuum sensor, where some map sensors started high, went low, some start low, go high. So, or when I want to check current on an injector, well, how much current should I flow? Oh, I don't know. Look at the flow chart. It tells you to ohm it out, and it measures 12 ohms, 12 volts applied, 12 divided by 12 is 1, So yeah, specifications, a good place to find it. Nissan, they give you cam crank sync patterns in their flow charts.
Yeah, I'm seeing that more and more often. That's pretty cool to see that in service info.
Yeah, sure. Code setting criteria. That's actually how I had met ATG. They sold books years ago that was nothing more than code setting criteria for all different manufacturers. This is going back, late 80s, early 90s. There were a company called Gendem at the time. And I loved those books because I'd get a code and I'd read why the code set, what was it looking for? Was it a high voltage, a low voltage, an erratic voltage? Was it a hot, cold?
I wish I had that for every single code. Sometimes some vehicle manufacturers are just really lacking in that description of what's going on there.
The problem is if you find out what's set in the code now and they change the software update, then the criteria changes. And I know that for a fact. I've done my homework on that. So, so we focus, I keep saying, on the simple stuff first. Perfect the basics. Don't go over your means. Don't go buy a piece of tool because it's cool. People ask me, I'm thinking about getting a new scope. You recommend the Pico or the E-scope? I say, what scope do you have now? And they say, I got a Varus. Well, what's wrong with the Varus? Is it broken? No. Well, what do you want to do with the Pico or E-scope that you can't do with the Varus? And I can't get an answer. They want to buy it because it's cool. Well, if you buy the new tool, you're going to go through the new learning curve and read the new manual.
Yeah.
Say what you got.
Yep.
Tell me what you need and why you need it.
Yeah, the tool that you're really familiar with, that exactly, again, the expected test results, that's going to be the best one for you. And no reason you can't add something new, but it should be a scenario where you've run into something and you're like, man, I wish I had this. That's the time that you're going to go purchase it.
Right. Nope. No, I'm not a huge fan on having to tell everybody you got to go buy factory level scan tools and the best scope on the planet to fix everything. I want to find a way to teach everybody how to do it. Simple and easy.
Great. Well, hey, we're running up on hour and a half. I don't want to keep you too
Is it
long.
that long already?
Yeah,
It must make you one of my trainers. This is the way we go about it. So
just flying by. I always do like to ask all my guests, though,
Sure.
if they have any recommendations for a younger tech or just somebody looking to improve themselves. And I mean, you've given a ton this evening, but I don't know if you had anything specific for somebody who's just getting started in this business.
Now, perfect the basics, and that's at all level. I don't care what level you are. I said earlier, do not try to be the like an A tech. Don't go from a C tech to an A tech. Don't go from a C tech to a B tech until you're a C plus tech. Now, you just mentioned scan tools. How many guys know all the features available in their scan tools?
Probably not a whole lot.
Yeah, learn the basics, perfect the basics. The career is a long lifetime career, hopefully, and you got plenty of time. The good news today is you could probably spend half your life on YouTube, right? And classes and webinars and get advice that way. But I pretty have said it. Don't go above your means. Take it slow. It's not an 8 to 5 job anymore. It's a career. If it's in your blood, practice on your own cars. If you got a scan tool, you got a scope. Why can't you go scope your own crank sensor or cam sensor?
Right.
Even this is not younger techs. This is any tech. Never take a tool and perform a test on a broken car until you performed it 10 times on a known good car. How do you know what a bad pattern looks like if you don't know what a good pattern looks like?
Yeah, that's huge. I've been guilty of that myself. We're looking at this and we're like, oh, is it good? Is it bad? And I haven't done it enough times to really know.
Yeah. Or you show your co, hey Bob, come here. Does that pattern look good? Nah. Or you find a pattern, oh, that's definitely bad. Then you found out that they changed the system around.
Yeah, or one engine's a little different than another,
If you're more of a tire and brake tech, you know what? There's a lot of knowledge about tires that you can learn. There's a lot about brakes. Now, just to give you an example, when maybe 20, 30 years ago, we didn't care about brakes. ABS was not a big thing. It was kind of like on the higher end vehicles. Now it's mandatory. Now we got cars that are using brake systems to steer you back in the lane if you're swerving. Now I've got tire size is absolutely critical when you get into ADAS systems with vehicle height. This was Wednesday night. A newer Hyundai with a TPS light on. The car was in an accident. Hit the left front fender. They put one new tire on. He says, well, I took the tire off. There was no sensor. I said, okay. I said, you can put it. He goes, I put a sensor in, and I can't program it. It turns out they don't use sensors. They use ABS speed.
Okay.
And one tire was brand new, and the other 3 are kind of worn out.
Yeah, that'll throw her off a little bit.
You lowered the tire pressure, and the new tire fixed it. So that's how, even the tire guy, if you're a lube guy, you're at that level, believe me, learn everything you can about lubrications, and you can teach me, because trying to keep up with these oil standards is another headache in itself, right?
Yeah.
And now you can build your foundation. So if you work your way up to a B tech and you start doing timing chains and belts, and then you get up to an A tech and you're doing diagnostics, a lot of the common causes of timing chain failures is go back, it's the lube, it's the oils they're using. So, but if you don't understand the oils, you would understand how it's affecting VVT and chain issues. So no matter what level you're at, try to perfect as best as possible before you move up.
Yeah, and I think any shop owner would admit, if you got a guy who is trying to be the best at what he's doing, even if it's tires or brakes, if he has that drive to be the best, they're going to hold on to you. They're going to move you up. You're going to get promoted. Even if you are just sweeping the floor, if you were doing the best job of sweeping that floor, guess what? You're going to do well.
Oh yeah, don't talk to me about sweeping floors. I used to call my bay the hospital bay. That's how clean I kept it. Okay. Now, someone had told me once, I can't be a slob in the bay and be a perfectionist under the hood. And I was having problems until I cleaned up my bay. And I was a perfectionist in the bay and a perfectionist on the hood.
Yeah.
I had to change my, I was the grease monkey back in the day. I wasn't the mechanic. I wasn't the technician. But a younger technician, if they've got the desire and they're willing to put it, I said it earlier, some techs can read a book once and get it. Sometimes you got to read it 2-3 times. Some of this ATIS stuff, I guarantee I'll read this stuff 3 times. And then I'm going to have to work with the PowerPoint. I'll give you an example. My opinion is that the average trainer, when we go to a classroom, besides my 47 years experience, I'm probably putting in anywhere from 50 to 100, maybe even 125 hours of prep time. Studying, research. So I don't think that someone gets smart because they were born smart or something to that effect. We all had to put in our legwork. But once you do, I still get chills when I teach.
Yeah, that prep time, if you've never done it before, I remember the first day that I went in to teach, transitioning from a tech to being a teacher. And I'm super nervous, but I had enough material I thought that would take me 2 days to cover with the class. And I was so nervous. I was talking so fast, and
Yep.
I got through everything by lunch, and I'm like,
That's the prep time. I'll shoot for about 200, 225 slides for 7 hours. Now, mind you, the 100 hours I'm talking about is the first time you teach it. So you have about 225 slides. And then after you teach the class 10 times, you're using all 225. But after about 10 times, you're using 190, 180, 170, 160, you're just slowing down.
yeah,
Actually, different ways to explain it, different analogies. But no, because you're going to teach the stuff, you're going to have to be confident. And there's always going to be a question that you have to have the answer to. So you're doing your research.
yeah.
I mean, I love that part. I mean, to me, it's fun to, go rent a car and start probing wires. And sometimes I'll bring my scan tool when I fly to rent the car and start playing around. And oops, think I broke something. Clear the code, go back into the car.
There's something wrong with this one.
Yeah. Yeah. We're trying to do relative compression on the car, and the clear flood mode wouldn't work. So I disconnected the coils.
Yeah.
And it set the code, check engine light. Okay. What's wrong with this car? No, it's a lot of prep work for a trainer, at least for, in my opinion, a trainer that's going to be versatile, and try to spend the time to not give you facts that you can find elsewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A theory of how something works, but an ideology of how we could diagnose it more confidently, quicker, and easier. And all that stuff's in our manuals. It's in our classes. We have case studies to prove it. The few interactive classes that we have, whether it be the wiring diagram or the scope class, you just do it and you can see it. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. This is great stuff. And yeah, I encourage anybody listening to check out. I'll put the link to ATG. It's atg.com, but I'll put the link in the show notes for anybody listening if they want to click on it and check all this stuff out.
Yeah, atgtraining.com. We normally have about 1 month of our scheduled webinars and live classes up there if someone wants to attend. All the manuals are available on our website for purchase. The only manual that would never be available is a class that we're currently teaching. So we're out on the road teaching the new Ford. That book won't be for sale for another year.
I see.
But so there'd be an older Ford book, the one that we did maybe 5 years ago.
Okay.
Well, they're all out there.
Great. Well, hey, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, no problem.
Really appreciate it. This has been great.
So, all right.
Okay, one more real big thank you to Kris for joining me on the show today. I really enjoyed that talk. It's crazy. Time just flew by as we were getting into all that stuff. But for anybody listening, once again, I really encourage you to check out any kind of training you can get. I mean, you're listening to this podcast, so you're already getting something, but some of these classes that ATG and other companies are putting on. It's so important to advance yourself as a technician, to grow your knowledge. So any of the ATG courses, whether it be in person, online, or even just the training manual, make sure to check out the link in the show notes, but I'll give it to you here as well. It is atgtraining.com, and you can find out the entire schedule, when and where you can make a class or get something set up so that you can take one of the online classes, whatever it might be. But that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening, and let's all get out there, start fixing the world one car at a time.